Thank you for joining me. And if you're watching on the replay, thanks for watching on the replay. Heads up, if you're on the replay, sometimes it's a little blurry in the beginning. So I look like real splotchy. It should clear up within a couple of minutes. So stick around, please. Stay with me here because we are talking something very important. So in the last live, we talked about imposter syndrome and the myth, the lie that is imposter syndrome. The reason I say the lie because imposter syndrome puts like the onus and like the error as like on the individual, when reality we're talking about all these outside influences that then dictate our own internal view and understanding of ourselves, that inner voice, those inner narratives. And today we're going to talk about how you can start to change those unhelpful, unhealthy, inaccurate narratives that you might be having about yourself that are actually holding you back. So, we are going to dive in. And let me actually just introduce myself really quick. If you don't know me, my name is Kristen Iris Johnson. I am a showrunner, film producer, screenwriter, and the CEO of Black Screenwriter Alliance here, where we bring together emerging Black screenwriters who are serious about growing a career in the film and television industry so that they can elevate their writing skills and their writing craft, confidently build industry relationships, and also forge a path in the industry that works for you, but to do it with allies, which is why we have our community. And you can go and check us out also, our online community at blackscreenwriteralliance.mn.co. You try free for 7 days. All right. So let's dive in. This month, we are talking a lot about pushing forward to progress beyond what your inner voice is saying to you. And we're doing this inside the community as well. So we're having conversations around this. We're talking about what mentally might be coming up, what might be holding you back, what action are you taking to push through. And these are really important conversations, and these are really important steps to take, because it is easy to just get stuck in like developing, and not actually writing, or writing but not actually finishing your script, or you finish all these scripts but you never actually take action. Why? Because you have not dealt with the mental landscape and built the mental fortitude to actually move forward and to push yourself outside of the wonderfulness that is your comfort zone to actually take bigger action. So what we're talking about here on this lovely channel here, and make sure that you like and subscribe so you get more of these live streams, is that inner narrative, that inner story that you may be holding about yourself that is holding you back. So this is something that definitely fuels imposter syndrome. It is something that can fuel perfectionism. It is something that can stop you from taking action, stop you from taking risks. It can be the thing that tells you that people don't want to hear your voice. That inner story about yourself. What are the narratives you hold about yourself? Oh, I'm not good at this. Um, I have to, even things like I have to work twice as hard to get half as much. These are still narratives that we hold. And they can be, even when there is evidence that they're true, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're helpful. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're true. So, where do some of these narratives come from? Again, we are talking about narratives that you hold about yourself. All right. And this is layered, right? There's like deeper layers of this that you have to kind of peel away. I love talking about this stuff. I love talking about the mindset and the mentality of not just being a creative and trying to move forward as a Black creative in this industry and in this world, which right now is real um not great. But I also love talking about this from a human perspective of like, how do we get out of our own way, while also recognizing what has shaped the beliefs that we have that are in our way, right? And so, where do these narratives come from? These perceptions of self are not just like, oh, I was born and then I had this perception, and then I've had this perception since I was 0 years old, right? They come from a lot of different places. We build our own narratives about who we are, about what we can do, about what we're allowed to have in the world and in life, off of a lot of the experiences and also messaging around us. So, narratives, things that can fuel and shape the narratives that you have about yourself is greater society, right? The way that society, and if you're in the States, and I speak from as someone who is in the States, who has lived my whole life in the States. If you're in the States, this country does not treat Black people with kindness, with dignity, with respect, with compassion, with humanity. And when you spend your life seeing that, even when you see excellence, even when you are being talked up or you're seeing people be celebrated, there's still such an onslaught on our humanity that can leave you with narratives like, I have to prove my humanity. And you may not even be thinking about it in that context. That's like the deeper level. But these narratives from the way society treats us could be, people will not respect me. I can work really hard and people will still demean me. And then you can go deeper even to like what that has start to teach you subconsciously about yourself that you may not even realize you actually believe. Right. So there's narratives, and then there's the deeper beliefs that start to root down from those narratives. So it's a little hard for me to cover this in a live, because like this is a topic that I can get into with such depth, and I can't do that on this live, right? Like I can't do that on YouTube live. I would be here for like a week. So I'm going to try and like rein it back and give it to you in a way where you have something actionable that you can do, but like you're understanding these concepts. So society is one of those things. Societal messages, media, big part of that as well. Also, other cultural influences like religion. All right. And specific culture that you may grow up in. Like if you grew up in like a Puerto Rican household, or you grew up, like um in like a Christian household. I mean, I guess that's religion, but these are also influences very much so that shape our early understandings of who we are as people and who you are as an individual, and the way that people relate to you from those perspectives, from those cultural perspectives or the religious perspective, or other communities that you might be a part of. That absolutely starts to shape your your identity, your idea of who you are and what you can do. These are experiences that condition our beliefs about ourselves. All right, so society, we have media, and there's all kinds of messages for media. There is, and I actually talked a lot about that in the last live about imposter syndrome, is how media messages and societal messages can influence what we see as possible for ourselves. And so there's what we see as possible ourselves because the world is saying this, and then that can turn inward to, oh, I am not worthy, or I am not enough, because society and media and all these other things are saying that I'm not enough. And then that starts to become a belief that not just I have to prove myself, but I have to prove myself because I am not enough, because I am not good enough, I am not smart enough, I am not blank enough, whatever that is for you. And that may take some digging in, right? And so, um, society, media, also culture, religion, your upbringing, your closest relationships, your parents, if you had siblings, if you had grandparents or other family members that were, close in the household, the way that these people taught you, interacted with you, your dynamic with them, these things can also shape your beliefs about yourself, and they get really deeply ingrained. So we're talking macro level, society, and then we're talking getting smaller, smaller down to the nuclear family unit. And school also a little bit bigger, not the nuclear family unit, but these are all places and history and experiences that you have that will shape your self perception. Now, these narratives that you have and these narratives that you have been carrying with you may not, they're not always true, and they are not always helpful, right? So these negative narratives, if you have a narrative about, um, people don't want to hear my voice, or whenever I try to share something, people are going to ignore it, or I have to work really hard to prove myself because people don't listen to me, or people will not see me as worthy, which then starts to travel into like, I am unworthy. These stories can show up in different ways, but for you, what's your story? Right? Like, what is the first thing to changing the narrative that you have about yourself, the narrative that's holding you back, the narrative that's keeping you playing small, the narrative that is having you discount your own talent and ability and um, power? The first step to that is like, identify the narrative, and there's going to be more than one, but like, what is a narrative that you might have? And if you're not sure, there's probably something that comes to mind, right? And whatever comes to mind right now is like probably surface level, unless you've gone through therapy or some other coaching and you've like already dug deeper into this. But you probably have like a surface level, um and I say surface level as in conscious, right? Like surface of the mind, it's conscious, it's something that you can name. And then there's like going deeper into that, like, where did that come from? So if you have a narrative, for example, that is like, oh, people aren't going to listen to me and people don't want to hear my voice, like my voice doesn't matter, right? So the outside message might be, oh, people aren't going to listen to me. But where that starts to translate into a belief is like, oh, my voice and my thoughts and my stories don't actually matter. And so because I'm holding this deeper belief, I'm not taking the action I want to, because I'm actually afraid that this belief is true and that my voice actually doesn't matter. Now, if you're like, "Oh, I'm not really sure what my narrative is," you can actually start this by asking like, "I am afraid of," or "I worry that." Like, these are some of the kind of questions that can help you. There was another one. What was it? Hold on. It was, I'm actually going to check and see. Oh, I feel stuck. That's the other one. So it's, I'm afraid, blah, blah, blah. I worry that, blah, blah, blah. I feel stuck because, and that can be another way that you can start to unravel what are your primary beliefs, what are your primary narratives about yourself. And as you can turn that into a journaling exercise, even, or just like write it out, like, I am afraid that, or I am afraid because, um I worry that, blah, 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 and just keep writing and see what comes out. And then you will start, if you keep going, you will start to tease out, oh, this is the story I've been holding. And it may take time to get to, the example that I gave is like, people don't want to hear my voice. That might go deeper, deeper, deeper until you discover like, oh, the belief that I have is that my voice is not of value, and that my stories are like, my voice is not worthy of being heard. And then once you identify, doing this exercise, I'm afraid that, or I'm afraid because, I worry that, I feel stuck because, these are great ones to start. You might find another entry point, but these are like three great ways to start, and start digging into like, what is the narrative, because the narrative is usually related to some kind of fear, and some kind of fear about yourself. And if it's something like, for example, how you can dig deeper is like, I am afraid to submit this project because I'm afraid I'm going to fail. Keep going. Like, what's really underneath that? What does failure mean? I'm afraid that I'm going to fail. And that would mean blank. And that would mean blank about me. And that would say this about me, or that would mean this happens. And then you can start getting into what is really underneath that. Now, I am reading, before I move forward with like the next thing after I identify, I came back to this book, Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. It was actually because I started reading this book, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. And there's a big chunk of this is dealing with vulnerability, and and vulnerability is like necessary for leadership. So this is a book for leadership, right? Because I'm trying to be a better leader. And a big chunk of this, like the whole first part, is about leaning into vulnerability, which is what this book is all about. So I got this years ago. I started it, didn't finish it. So I'm like, nope, gonna read this now because I am trying to improve myself. I want to be a better leader. That means that I have to lean into vulnerability. And one thing she talks about in this book with vulnerability is the presence, the like overwhelming presence of shame and what you are ashamed of. So if we take that fear of failure, right? Let's take that as an example. I am afraid to do XYZ because I'm afraid I'm going to fail. Go deeper, because failure doesn't really mean anything except what you put, the meaning you put on it. So what meaning did you put on it? If I fail, that means, and that would mean, and that would mean, and that would mean, and keep going, because what often comes out of that, and it may be something different for you, but what often comes out of that comes down to I'm not enough, I am not worthy, and I'm afraid because if I do this, it is going to prove this deeper down narrative that I have that I am not worthy. And that makes me feel shame, which is what this book talks about. And we don't like shame because it's shame. And shame makes us feel extremely vulnerable. And shame is also not always justified, right? Um, but I wanted to bring that up because it's like a really good book, guys. It's go get it. Um, so when you're digging into that narrative, it's like go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. But whatever it is that you come up with, you can always keep going deeper. But like whatever it is that you find is like, oh, this is a narrative I'm holding. This is the story about me that I'm hanging on to. Is then to once you identify it, is like, okay, is this actually true? And so one thing that you can do, actually, I'm going to pull out another book here. This book, We Should All Be Millionaires, has like a great exercise around this because this deals with like our money stories, right? And so your money beliefs and how to start unraveling those beliefs. So, like, there was a great exercise in this, and it was around, I don't remember it exactly, but I just want to show you this because, I like to give credit for where I come up with, where I find something valuable or where something inspired something else. So that when I was reading that book, I ended up going through like this whole deep dive into like my money beliefs and my relationship to money and wealth and 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 finances. And one of the things that I did, and I don't know if it was in the book or if it was something that I did as I was like going through, and I just kind of like took this further for myself, is what is the evidence that proves this belief is true? And that's not a trick question because you may find evidence that proves this belief is true. Let's take that surface level in your conscious mind example that I had of, oh, like people don't care about my voice. They don't care to listen to me. Evidence that proves this true. It could be that maybe when you were a kid, you would say things or you would point things out and people wouldn't ignore you. People would ignore you. And then it would end up being that you were right. And they just didn't listen to you because they were like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. She doesn't know what they're talking about. And they didn't listen to you. So they did not listen to your voice. You would say, hey, this is not a good idea, or you have to do it this way. Or like, whatever it is, but that people would just disregard things that you were saying, and then you would turn out to be right, but they would have disregarded you. Definitely that is evidence that feeds the story of people will not listen to my voice or people don't care what I have to say. All right. So again, this is not a trick question, but then you look at like, what is the evidence that disproves this? we can't just look for the confirmation bias, right? We can't just look for the things that say, oh, this is true. See, look at this thing that happened. It's like, but what about the things that show that it's not true? And those are also really, really important to point out. The whole reason for the evidence that proves it's true is like, you're not crazy. There is a reason that you feel this way. There are things that have happened that can have conditioned you to believe this thing about yourself, or to think that this is how people respond. So you're not crazy. But looking at what is the evidence that disproves this also helps to give you perspective and context. So for example, maybe it's um my friends are always asking me for advice and then thanking me for shifting their perspective. They were listening to your voice, right? Like, that is evidence that disproves that people will not listen to you and that your voice doesn't matter. So you want to look at both of those, because as you start to look at, here's the evidence that this is not 100% true all of the time, it starts to break through, right? It starts to break through the power and the grip of that belief. Because if that belief, or that's the story that you have, when you start to see, oh, but this isn't true. See, over here, and here's this other thing that happened. It's like, oh, maybe this is just a story I've been telling myself. Maybe this isn't something that I have to live into, because maybe it's not actually 100% true 100% of the time. Right? So that part of it, identify the narrative, and then what are the things that prove, what's the evidence to prove and evidence to disprove, because that starts to chip away at the armor of that belief, of that narrative that you have. Then, right? So that's number 2, is prove, disprove, because you're chipping away at the armor. 3 is now you have to start actively changing that narrative, right? And that can come in a lot of forms. It can come in the form of affirmations, like telling yourself something that feels more true and that you also want to be more true and that you want to live into, right? So after affirmations are kind of like the first easy level of doing this. But there's also, it's not just, you can't just say it to yourself, right? Like, you have to start doing things that actually prove, which means you have to start doing, right? Doing things. Lean into the evidence that it's false. Write a new narrative and then do something that goes against the narrative that you are holding. Do something that proves that it's not true. And you might end up getting some more evidence that it's like, oh, okay, that didn't pan out, blah, blah, blah. But you might, when you start taking action based off of the new narrative that you are building, when you continuously remind yourself, no, this is not 100% true 100% of the time. When you continuously do that, it opens the pathway for you to not only start seeing more that's possible, but to actually do things that defy the narrative that you were holding about yourself, and that narrative that has been holding you back, right? There, and actually, I'm gonna dive into that in a second. So you want to start doing things that challenge that, doing things that, put you out there in a different way. So um the actually, let me get into what I was just about to say. We sometimes don't realize that these narratives that we hold, right, these stories, these inner stories, have dictated our actions to the point where we actually start doing things that then prove the narrative. All right, so you start living into the narrative itself. No one wants to hear, no, my voice doesn't matter. No one wants to hear what I have to say. So you stop putting your voice out there, or you start putting your voice out there in places where where you don't even want your voice to be. And now, like, like, maybe you're in a space online where there are trolls, and it's like, of course they're not going to listen to you, because those are the people that don't even like us. um but you may find yourself doing things or putting yourself in situations that you subconsciously, not consciously, but subconsciously believe are going to confirm this belief you have about yourself. And when you confirm that, What that does is it stops you from taking further action. It keeps you in your comfort zone and it keeps you playing small. So this is where the doing, right? The expanding of that narrative, the doing starts to really shift change for you, because taking action that defies that narrative or could potentially defy that narrative not only starts to teach you to challenge these stories that you have about yourself and to take action beyond what that story is telling you you can do, but it has the potential of unwriting that story entirely. The thing about this, and this is another kind of related to daring greatly, is that can be scary, right? Challenging yourself, challenging the narrative, doing something that you're like, but I've been telling myself I can only do this, or I can only show up this way, or I'm not worthy, subconsciously telling myself that, or I'm not enough, or I have to do X, Y, and Z. Maybe instead of like, okay, I have this deeper belief that I am actually not enough, so I have to do all these things to prove myself before I can take whatever action. Maybe you don't do all those things. Maybe you just take a big action anyway, and it may not pan out, right? And so this is where her work, Brene Brown's work, comes into play around vulnerability. Is you have to be able to risk that failure. Taking action, it might pan out. It might then prove the narrative is not true. It might not prove anything at all. There might be nothing that happens from it. But there's a bit of a risk in taking the action, because the fear is that if it doesn't work, it's going to prove this deeper belief that you have. What you really don't want is, I don't want that to be true. I don't want it to be that I'm not worthy. I don't want it to be that nobody cares about my voice. And when you start to take action to try and defy that narrative, there is a bit of taking a risk that, oh no, what if that narrative is really true? And that can feel scary, but that's also why you have to take the action. And then not just one action, you got to keep taking action. Because eventually, if you keep doing things that have the potential to defy that narrative, you're going to defy the narrative. The odds are in your favor. If you do it once, you may not. Right? Like you might be like, oh, people don't want to hear my voice. I'm going to reach out to this big name producer. Okay, that producer may not respond. That doesn't actually mean that nobody wants to listen to your voice. It's just the odds of them responding were low. But if you keep taking action, you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna submit to this competition. I'm gonna submit to this fellowship. Oh, I'm gonna try and connect with this director and just ask them about their experience. You just start taking bigger action. You just start getting yourself out there. Eventually, you're gonna do something that's gonna prove the narrative wrong. The narrative that is not actually true, that you have already seen evidence is false. If you keep doing action while you are risking the kind of perceived confirmation of the narrative, you are also deliberately doing things to defy the narrative. And eventually, you're going to start unwriting that narrative. The very act, the very action of doing something to try and defy it, that by itself, regardless of the outcome, that by itself actually starts to defy the narrative, because you are taking action on the belief that this is not true. And this new narrative that you have, that my voice is powerful, that people want to hear what I have to say, you are acting on that narrative. Whatever the response is, you are taking action based on a new narrative that you are choosing to live into. And by choosing to live into it, you are choosing to hold that belief. You are choosing to act from that belief. And that starts to unwrite the old belief, and it starts to lose power. And that new belief starts to really stick. It starts to be more ingrained because you are living into the action of it, even outside of whatever the outside response is. This is about you. You are doing the action that defies it. You are doing an action based off the new belief that you want to hold and that you want to live into. And that is where that starts to shift. So this was a deep dive into this. I really want to know what you guys are getting from this. So, if you're watching on the replay, definitely share in the comments. Make sure also that you like and subscribe to this channel for more This is the kind of stuff that I love getting into with people. So, just to recap, when it comes to these narratives that we hold about ourselves, there are a lot of influences: society, media, upbringing, culture, religion, um, our community, and this is for like our whole life, right? Like all of these experiences that you have that have shaped your beliefs about yourself. So when those beliefs are not helpful, when those beliefs are holding you back, you have to identify the narrative that you hold, the story that is holding you back. Look at the evidence that proves it and look at the evidence that disproves it, because that starts to shake, right? That starts to shake the conviction of the truth of this narrative, because you're finding things that are showing that it's not true. And then when you start to look at that, you have to then start to change the narrative by figuring out, deciding what new narrative you actually want to live into, by taking action, right? Taking action to live into that, regardless of the outcome, taking action based off of the new belief instead of living into the old belief. And part of that taking action is also identifying what actions or what things have you been doing that have been living into this old outdated belief, that now you could be like, oh, I should stop doing that because it was based off of this harmful belief or harmful story I had about myself that I don't actually want to live into anymore. So these things are ways that will help you. The other thing is having support. I say this all the time: having a community of support, having people that you trust. I have like multiple writer group chats with different writer groups and friends that I have, and that's just my writing group. Then I got like my friend group, I got my sister group, right? Like I have different people that I can call on. I have my support system and I have my people where when I'm down or I'm struggling, that I could be like, yo, this is what's going on. And those are the people that will help me break through or remind me of the, not the false narrative, but remind me of like the truth that I may have been like blocking out and like forgetting about myself. Right? Those are the people that will push you, that will lift you up, that will support you, that will build you up, that will help you get out of that story in your head, and that will remind you of everything that you actually bring and everything that you are that you may not remember. So we have a space for Black screenwriters. You can check it out, blackscreenwriteralliance.mn.co. Try it free for 7 days. That is our online membership community where you get to actually connect with other Black screenwriters. So like, yes, I have this channel where I'm talking about these conversations, but in the community, we are doing so much more. And it is really a place for building genuine relationships, genuine connections, not just transactional, but really building connections with people that can be your allies in the industry, where you are learning together, you are growing together, you are pushing each other. We also have things in there like workshops. We have industry guests. We have an amazing guest next month in August. But yes, we have workshops, industry guests. We have a monthly goal setting and action call. We have strategy calls, co-working calls, lots of ways to connect and to stay on track and to push yourself so that you can, as we say, forge your own path in the industry and do it with allies. So make sure that you come check us out, blackscreenwriteralliance.mn.co. You can click the link in the description as well and check that out. And then make sure that you also check out, make sure that you subscribe, because I'm going live twice a week. So make sure that you like this video, share it out with someone that you're like, yo, you have got to see this deep dive, baby. All right. And make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you know when we go live and that you get our most updated videos and live streams when they go out. So thank you so much. And, share in the comments, what did you get from this? In fact, what is a narrative? Let's share, right? Sharing is caring. Let's be honest. Let's be vulnerable. Like Brene Brown says, what is a narrative that you are holding right now or that you have been living into that is holding you back? Just share that in the comments. Let's be honest, right? Honesty hour here. Okay. So share that in the comments. And that way, once you identify it, you can start moving through these steps to actually change that narrative and take action to move you beyond that narrative into something new and something that is more empowering. So love to see it. Want to hear what you guys have to say. And I will see you guys in the next live stream. Thank you so much.